Were they trying to kidnap my son? Posted by user happyhumansomeday on R Creepy Encounters. I am the single mother to an obnoxiously adorable 7-year-old boy. This happened when he was 5 years old in the summer of 2018, and the what-ifs still haunt me. There is a beautiful park on the river that my son and I used to frequent. On this summer evening, we decided to picnic in the park for dinner. When we arrived, there were lots of families playing with their children on the playground. We found a spot in the grass near the water, laid down our big purple blanket, and began to eat. I was facing the playground, just people watching, when I noticed a group of 3 children that seemed to be alone. There were 2 boys and 1 girl, and they looked to be between the ages of 9 and 12. You know that bad feeling you get when something just doesn't feel right? These kids gave me that feeling almost instantly. I brushed it off because, well, they were only kids. My son and I were almost done eating and ready to play when some dark clouds came rolling in. We live in Florida, and this is standard for a summer evening, so I decided to wait it out and see if it would pass, and it did. Everyone cleared the park with the exception of the group of children that I mentioned before. It was at this point that I realized they were definitely alone. I figured they must live nearby. I took my son on the swing, and these kids were just sort of hanging around near us and staring, but not saying anything. Then the youngest-looking boy came up to my son on the swing and stood in front of it so that my son almost hit him while he was swinging. He just stood there. I asked him what he was doing, and he did not answer. It made me super uneasy, so I took my son off the swing and over to the jungle gym on the other side of the playground. My son and I were playing on the other side of the park, and I did not see the other kids anymore, so I thought they must have left. I sat down on the bench near the jungle gym and watched my son as he played. About 10 minutes later, I looked over toward the parking lot and noticed the same group of kids were actually still at the park and were over there talking to an older man with a dog. This went on for another 5 minutes or so, and then the man and the children parted ways. The man walked down the street in the opposite direction, and the children came back to the park and over to the jungle gym where my son was playing. I was still sitting on the bench, which was probably about 10 feet away from the jungle gym, when those kids started hanging around and talking to my son. They were asking him lots of questions, like, "How old are you?" and "Where do you go to school?" He was answering while climbing around and didn't seem to be paying a whole lot of attention. I was watching the other kids the entire time this was going on because they just gave me an unwavering bad feeling, and after a few minutes, they got off the jungle gym and began walking toward the road. I was so fixated on the top of their heads as they were walking away that I didn't realize my son, who was tiny, was walking with them. They were almost to the street when I screamed my son's name, and he turned around and bolted back to me. I asked him where he was going, and he said, "They said they had to show me something." We left immediately. I really don't know if it was sinister or not, but I can't explain the kids trying to lead my son out of the park, and I often think about what could have happened if I wasn't paying attention. Was the old man somehow involved? I spoke with my son about following the stranger danger rule with anyone he doesn't know, even if they are kids like him. We don't play at that park anymore. I drive by that park on occasion, and I've seen that old man a few times, but I haven't seen those children.
Stalked by a homeless couple at work. Posted by user HondaGuy1998. I'm a security guard, 22, male, and was working the graveyard shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was posted at a library where my main task was to watch for trespassers. Particularly an older male who kept coming back to the library overnight. The library had a bolo out for him, and emailed me a photo of him, so I was on the lookout. Around 1 a.m., I got up from the security desk to go out on patrol. As I approached the door to go outside, I saw 2 homeless people sitting outside on a bench with a large shopping cart covered by a blue tarp. Not joking about this. The tarp had red stains all over it. Being generally creeped out already, I hesitated to even go outside at all. I thought about just using the on-site cell phone to call the police department, as that is what I am supposed to do. However, I decided it wouldn't be right to call without politely letting the couple know they were trespassing first, and give them an opportunity to leave without incident. And it would have been less work for me, as anytime I have to call the police department, I have to make an incident report. So, I grabbed my flashlight and walked outside, identifying myself as security and letting the couple know that they needed to leave. They were a younger African-American couple. Neither one matched the description of the bolo suspect. The man was pacing back and forth, smoking a cigar and writing something on a notepad. The woman was sitting down, sort of just staring into space. So, anyway, I asked them both to leave, and the woman begins arguing with me about how she's homeless and how the police already told her she could stay there. I knew that was obviously a lie, and told her that she needed to leave, once again. We got onto the subject of how they were loitering, and I kept trying to explain to her that she was loitering and that wasn't allowed at the library. She began to argue with me about the definition of loitering and just being a pain in the butt. This whole time, the man said absolutely nothing and was just in his own world, continuing to pace back and forth and chain smoke. I realized I wasn't going to get anywhere by being nice, so I informed them that I would be calling the police, and retreated back inside the security room to call. 10 minutes went by after I called, and the couple appeared to be gone. A few moments later, the police arrived and I went outside to talk to them. They really didn't seem to care much, as to be expected, right? And once they saw that they were gone, they just told me to call them back if they returned. So, I go out on patrol, and as I'm making my way around the building, I run into the same woman who I just called the police on. She was now by herself, and the man was nowhere in sight. She had a very odd stance and posture. It's difficult to describe, but if you've ever played any of the Silent Hill games, her posture was similar to the way the nurses from Silent Hill stand. I didn't even say anything to her, and she didn't seem to notice me at all. I went back to where the police were still parked and told them she was still on the premises. They got out of their cars and walked with me to where she was standing and asked her to leave. She started telling them that she had permission to be there, and the sheriff told her she was allowed to be there. They told her she wasn't, and to make a long story short, she eventually left. Or so I thought. After the police finally left, I went back inside and made a cup of coffee. I decided I wanted a little fresh air, so I stood outside and drank my coffee. It was around 2 a.m. at this point. Now, this is where things get really creepy. Next to the library parking lot is a big park with a playground. I started to hear what sounded like faint whispers, followed by menacing laughter. I look over in the direction of the noise and barely manage to spot the couple. The man had returned and was standing next to the woman from earlier. They were just staring at me. Because it was so dark, I could only see their silhouettes, and their eyes were literally glowing. Kinda like when a person's eyes glow in a picture. The woman kept laughing, while the man said in a slow, monotone voice all the different ways he could hurt me. He said it loudly enough to understand what he was saying, and I knew he was talking about me. He was talking to her about cutting my face off and skinning me. Then he shouts, "That uniform doesn't make you tough." And at that point, I just got too sketched out and went inside to finish my shift. The rest of the night was unsettling too, because I kept hearing voices outside and tapping on the walls and doors, and knew it was them. Luckily, they couldn't get inside without a keycard. When my shift ended, it was once again daylight outside. I went to my car and there was a sticky note that read, "Next time, you won't be so lucky," with a crosshair symbol next to the words. Needless to say, I am never returning to that library overnight.
I'm never taking my girlfriend's brother to the park again. Submitted by user /the spork and r/let's not meet. So, this happened a year ago, and I'm still pretty shaken by this whole event. I thought I'd tell my story. I live in the UK, and in autumn, it gets dark at around 4 p.m. There was a school autumn break that week, so all the kids were at home, so that means my girlfriend's brother was home too. I'd been with her for a year at that point, so her family knew me pretty well and her brother enjoyed my company. She'd recently been pretty stressed out. Her parents were going out across the country for the day, so she had to look after her brother. But I thought I'd give her a day to herself so she could just cool off. I asked her parents if I could look after their son for the day instead, and they agreed. So I came around 8 a.m. and they let me in before they set off. My girlfriend's brother woke up about an hour later, and she followed shortly afterward. We went out to a breakfast at a local cafe together and went back to her house after we were done. And once I dropped her off, I took her bird to the park. We got there about 2 p.m. and the place was pretty packed. Eventually, the sun started to go down and the place was completely empty by 4 p.m. I texted my girlfriend and told her we'd be home in a bit, and she said okay. I'm going to be honest, I completely lost track of time. Me and her brother were having fun being the only two in the park. Me and her brother stood on top of this really tall climbing frame with a slide on it. It was almost pitch black at this point, so I was using my phone as a flashlight. A notification popped up on my screen, and it was my girlfriend asking where we were. I responded, "Oops, coming home now," and told her brother we had to go. He sighed and asked if we go down the slide, and I said yes. Before I went down, I saw what the park looked like. There were street lights all around it, benches everywhere, some trees, and places for kids to play. When I came out of the slide, there was something weird. A man had appeared out of nowhere and stood beneath one of the street lights. He had a trench coat on and a beanie hat. I immediately got my girlfriend's brother behind me and called out to the man with a friendly, "Hi there." I got a response, and he started groaning. I noticed he was swaying back and forth in the light, and he had his mouth open, drooling with a blank look in his eyes. The man made me feel really fucking uneasy. I picked little bro up and kept checking on this guy the entire time. There was an exit to my left that led to the path back home, so I left out that way and kept checking behind me every few seconds. The guy was still standing there. The path where the guy stood merges with a big main path if you walk out through some bushes, and so does the one I walked through. I was walking down the path for about 2 minutes, periodically checking behind me, and thought I was in the clear. I wasn't. I was on a straight stretch of path with lots of street lights when I saw him again. He was standing beneath one, looking at it, and he was playing with something in his hand. I looked closer and realized it was a fucking knife. I kept walking and walking, checking behind me constantly. Girlfriend's little brother was so scared he had his head tucked into my chest. I noticed that the guy seemed to be moving to new streetlights whenever I turned around. Initially, I thought it was my eyes playing tricks on me, but I started counting them and realized 2 streetlights behind him had definitely turned into 5. I could faintly hear the groaning noise, and he was occasionally moaning as well. I picked up the pace a bit and turned around a corner, getting into the last stretch of the street before I got to my girlfriend's house. That was when I heard him behind a row of bushes. That moaning noise sounded angry, and I heard his heavy footsteps bounding down the path. The man was fucking running. I immediately broke into a sprint and didn't stop until I turned an alleyway at the front of the street and got behind my girlfriend's house. There was a big bush there, so I crouched down behind that and spammed her phone with messages to open the back gate. I hugged her brother close, and she opened it up for us and got us in quickly. It felt like years. I went to the front of the house and had it confirmed that I had managed to shake him. He was now in the street, circling where I had been, outside of the alleyway just moments ago. He was still moaning, and he had that knife in his hand still. He started kicking people's bins over. I called the police immediately, but he was gone by the time they arrived, and as far as I know, they never found him. There was a similar incident near the area a few months ago I saw in the local Facebook group, but I don't think anything came of that either. Her parents thanked me for keeping their son safe and didn't hold any ill will against me for the situation. He went back to normal pretty much the day afterward, but he still has nightmares about that event. When my country isn't in lockdown, I'm still allowed to look after him with my girlfriend, funnily enough. But we haven't been to that park ever since. and I still check over my shoulder and break into a cold sweat every time I'm alone in the street. Thank you all for watching. If you want to find the original stories or the voice actors that read them, the links are in the description down below. If you like this sort of content, we will be posting Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. All of this is being done for free and by a small independent team, so be sure to show some love. I hope you all stay creepy, stay safe, and have a gay day.